Hi, my name is Nicole Delaney, and I am the director of the Thomas Killian Academic Success Center at the University of Sioux Falls. One of the services my office provides is career services, and so today I am going to talk to you about resumes, cover letters, and just the job search process overall. You'll see on the screen that there's also another name, Jessica Carlson. She is the assistant director of the Thomas Killian Academic Success Center, and she is primarily the contact in our office for career services, although our whole office is able to assist you with the various services we provide. Our services do include resume assistance, cover letter assistance. We don't do job placement, but we certainly help with the process of searching for positions. And we also like to highlight that this is a lifetime service. So once you graduate from the University of Sioux Falls, there is no time limit on when you can come back to receive assistance in the future for any of these services. So we hope that this is something that you will take advantage of. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. First of all, why should your resume be good? Oftentimes people consider the resume as the overall purpose of a resume to actually land the job, but that is not the purpose of the resume. The purpose of a resume is to help you obtain the job interview. And then the job interview is what gets you the job. So this is just the start of the process along with the application. You still have to complete the interview process. And we also have interview information and assistance with that as well, which we can go through at another time. So you want to think of your resume as a marketing tool. Think of it as something that is an advertisement of you. It highlights your education, skills, qualifications, and experience. Basically, what this should do is it should spark the interest of the employer and motivate the employer to contact you for more information. So you want to provide enough applicable information to the employer so that they feel that you would be a good candidate and want to learn more about you. Okay, so your goal again is to obtain an interview, not get the job right up front. A resume is basically a window. It's a brief view of who you are and what you've accomplished. So this is a window to the view of you. It's a brochure about you. We like to talk about the 8-second or 10-second test. And what that means is that you have a very short window in order to make an impression where somebody decides that they want to learn more about you. An example of this is a supervisor that I know personally that reviews resumes regularly to fill positions in her office. Will look at a resume, and if it does not catch her eye, if it just seems disorganized or sloppy or anything like that, she uses that as a reason to eliminate the resume from a large pool of applicants that are trying to get in for an interview. So it is important that you make your resume very presentable so that it can pass that 8 to 10 second test where they want to read further and learn about you. You want it to have brevity and readability. It needs to be easy to navigate and skim quickly. So formatting is really important. So when I was just talking about the 8-second or 10-second test, that formatting is really what people are looking at. Generally, this is a pretty common question as to whether you should keep a resume 1 to 2 or at least just 1 page. There are varying opinions on that. Generally, new graduates can keep it to 1 page. However, if you have enough valuable experience to put on a resume and it's going to look crowded in 1 page, you don't want it to look too crowded either. So If it can go onto 2 pages and be a substantial amount onto a second page in order to highlight some great experience that you have, I think that's perfectly okay. If you're going to go on a second page for just a couple lines, I think then you really need to look at, adjusting margins, font, those kinds of things. So this is kind of a case-by-case basis and a good reason to get feedback on a resume so that we can kind of give our perspective on whether you would be a good candidate to have a 2-page resume, or if there should be a way to try to get it into 1 page, if that makes sense. So case-by-case basis, but the 1-page rule is not a hard and fast rule. Okay, so you want your headings to grab the attention of your readers. You want them to be effective and organize your resume in an understanding way. So your required headings are your name and contact information, your education, your professional and work experience. So that would be anything that you could attribute to the profession that you are currently trying to get into. So if you are an accounting major, if you are a nursing major, if you're a business administration major, any of these things, that's where you're going to want to highlight the related professional work experience that you have. The next heading would be any other related experience. So that could be any positions that are not necessarily directly involved with that field of interest. However, it was good work experience. You gained good transferable skills, customer service skills, anything that you want to highlight about you, your work ethic, those kinds of things. So those would be the required sections. You also have the optional sections. One of those would be an objective or qualification summary. This is one of those things that, resume feedback is pretty subjective. If you ask one person one thing, another person could have a preference for something else. So you can get conflicting information here. But my personal opinion is that I usually have people leave the objective or qualification summary off of their resume. A lot of the times, the things that are included in the objective or the qualification summary are things that you would be including in your cover letter or in the bullet points that go underneath your professional work experience or your related experience. So to me, it's a section that is repetitive and just takes up space, very valuable space on a resume. So my opinion is to leave those off. You also have the optional sections of leadership activities, collegiate involvement. If you were an RA, student senate, member of an athletic team, member of a choir, if you've served any specific leadership roles in these positions, such as a team captain or president, anything like that, those are great things to include in a section like that. Volunteer experiences also, if you have any of those, many career fields like nursing and education, and really any field in general, are looking for things beyond just a degree. They're looking to see that you have experience beyond what your classes require. So start looking for opportunities to volunteer early and include these on your resume. As far as languages or study abroad goes, if this is applicable, it would be a good thing to put on there. Speaking Spanish, for example, is appropriate to list in a variety of positions. So that is something that you would want to put on there. But you also only want to include those things if they are something that you are very proficient in. Because if you are advertising it as something on your resume that you can do, they are going to want you to be able to do that in a professional capacity of some sort. Computer and technology skills, again, you put them if applicable. This is not assumed. So even in this era of technology that we live in, not everybody has technological skills, so it is important that you do highlight those things and don't assume that they're assumed. Okay, so if you are competent in various photo editing, graphic design programs, if you're applying for a marketing position, that would be a great thing to highlight. Not everyone has the skills. But you don't necessarily need to include, like if you are an education major, using a smartboard. So definitely, again, this is something you can get feedback on, but it's a good thing to include, but there are some things that you may not want to. So I know that's kind of a confusing statement there, but you know, it is good to highlight those things, but definitely that's what we are here for, is to kind of review those things to say, oh, I don't know if that's necessary to include on here. Research and presentations. If at any point you have done any professional research in any classes or for anything that you're involved in, or have done any presentations, those are wonderful to include. If you have any professional membership, such as a National Honor Society or a professional association. Honors and awards. If you've made the Dean's List, if you've received the Purple Feather Award, an NCAA Athletic Award, those types of things are all resume worthy to put on your resume. Okay, so as far as formatting goes, you want to make sure you have your name and contact information at the top. You want to make sure you are using a professional sounding email. I know that this doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but if you have an unprofessional sounding email, again, this is one of those things with the 8-second rule that we talked about earlier, that if they see an unprofessional or immature sounding email, that could be reason for them to just discard your resume without even looking into you further. So a personal email account that only has your name in it, or your university email, anything like that. But really make sure that you are paying attention to that and taking that seriously. And even though this is not related to resume, this is a great time to bring up. You also want to make sure that your voicemail, or if you have ringback tones, that those are professional as well. We do run into quite often just calling students from our office for whatever reason. We do often run into people having silly voicemails, such as pretending that they're there when it's actually a voicemail. Again, you may think these things are cute and funny, which they can be, but when you are looking for a job, again, somebody could only call you one time, and if they get that silly voicemail, they are going to use that as a reason to not contact you again. And then also going into that, your social media, you really need to be making sure that that is appropriate. You know, making sure that you do not have pictures of you drinking or partying or in any unsavory positions or situations. And also not bad-mouthing employers or courses or classwork or professors, anything like that. So these are definitely things that you need to be considering. You need to consider the professionalism that you are projecting. I know it's hard to consider when you're a college student, but you do need to be thinking about those things. Okay. Education information. You do not need to include any high school information at this point, unless it's really relevant to what you are applying for. Even though this particular presentation is geared for business students, a good example of that would be a certified nursing assistant position when you were in high school for somebody who's becoming a nurse. And you also want to put your graduation or anticipated graduation date. Don't abbreviate dates or titles. Bachelor of Science degree, not BS. Write out the months in the dates. Don't use numbers or abbreviations. You want to list your major or your majors, minors, specializations, and concentrations. And list your GPA if it is above a 3.0. Okay, and as other sections, so you'll have your related experience, your work experience, volunteer experience, collegiate involvement. This is just one example of a format that you can use, but this is definitely one that we like, so we highlight it. And another thing you'll want to notice about this is that everything is very congruent with each other. Everything lines up very nicely. All of the dates are as far right as they can possibly be. The headings are the same font and size and bold. The titles, the Bachelor of Arts degree or the fundraising chair, undergraduate research, those are all the same font and size, the same amount of bullet points in general. So again, just really making sure things are formatted very nicely so that they look, clean lines, and it's just something that is nice to look at. Okay, and then other sections that you might want to consider that might be applicable or appropriate. Positions you've held at USF under related or work experience. If you've been involved in clubs or organizations that don't necessarily apply for the job you're applying for, you can list them under collegiate involvement. Okay, and again, try to keep it to one page. We try to get it on one page using adjusting your margins or your font size. But again, you don't want things to look too crowded either. You don't want things to be smaller than a 10-point font. So, take those things into consideration. And if you do need to move on to a second page, you need to move on to a second page. Again, please get feedback on that because it really is kind of a case-by-case basis. All right, so you're going to want to use professional vocabulary on your resume. So that is when we are thinking about like those bullet points that are right here. Finding ways to put professional vocabulary into those bullet points as well as into your cover letter, which we'll be talking about very shortly as well. So ways that you can find these keywords, key professional words, looking at the job description and the company website for where you're applying. A lot of times there will be verbiage in those that you can incorporate into your current job descriptions or things like that to demonstrate what you're currently doing or what you have learned applies to what they are doing now. Other job descriptions that are similar to the one you're looking for. Job descriptions for the profession you're looking at in the Occupational Outlook Handbook or ONET Online. Any professional associations or standards that are related to the profession you're going into. All of these places are wonderful ways that you can increase your professional vocabulary on your cover letter and resume. You'll also want to think about using strong action verbs in those bullet points or again in your cover letter. So examples are of weak words are on the left and the strong words are on the right. The weak words are not necessarily bad words to use, but they are words that are most commonly used. So what you can do is use it once, but if you need to say assisted again, that you want to find other ways to use that verb so that you're not using the same word over and over again. So I'm going to get out of this section, out of this PowerPoint for 1 second here, and we're going to switch over. I would like to show you on the ASC Services page in MyUSF. There are lots of documents here that will be helpful for you. So you go to ASC Services, and then you go to Career Services, and then Resume, Cover Letters, and Interviews. So lots of examples in here, great things to look at. But if you go into this Resume and Cover Letter Design, I'm just going to scroll down here a little bit. Lots of great things in this document. But if you scroll all the way down to page 15, we have strong action verbs documents within here. So as you'll see, there are wonderful examples of lots of different words that you can use for what is a very common word. And again, the second page, lots of other words to use as well. So this is a way for you to stand out as somebody who can find different ways of saying the same types of skills that other people that are applying for the same positions that can help you stand out. So do really take this into consideration. Okay, and back to the PowerPoint. So just on the bottom here, you will see an example of a bullet point that is not very impactful versus one that provides more detail and is impactful. So the difference between assisted with care of patients versus provided immunizations, anticipatory guidance, and health promotion education to pediatric patients. If you were reading a resume for a job that you wanted to hire somebody for, which of those would impress you more? So that is what we are talking about when we are wanting you to really take into consideration how to write those bullet points. When you are describing your experience, you want to really try and focus on transferable skills. So these are skills or experiences that are valued by the employer. These are things that you can find in the job descriptions probably. You know, if they have a focus on team building or communication, computer skills, you know, just anything like that. That's why we really recommend looking at that job description to see if there's anything that you want to try to focus on as far as your transferable skills go, or just focusing on things that are valued by any employer. So I said the team building and communication already, but also thinking about problem solving skills or written communication, oral communication skills, critical thinking, quick thinking, all of those kinds of things, able to make decisions. So lots of great things to demonstrate. So, you know, don't just think about the content specific skills that you have from your coursework or the super specific job related skills that you have. You also want to think about what did you get from your education. So when USF, we're always talking about the liberal arts core and what you're supposed to be getting out of that. This is one of those reasons that we are always talking about that, is because we want you to be able to articulate what those content or what those transferable skills that you gained from your classes are. Those are definitely the things employers are really looking for now, because they do see kind of a lack of that in the graduates that are coming at them now. So please do really think about, when you are in your classes, think about, what am I supposed to be getting out of this class other than just the content? Am I supposed to be figuring out how to communicate better, or work better with a team, or really think critically about things? Because those are things that you're going to want to be able to articulate on a resume, in a cover letter, and also in an interview later on. Okay, so again, this is just a really good example of, even though you wouldn't necessarily think being a server at a restaurant is related experience, it really all depends on how you can articulate what you did at that restaurant. So this is an example of an ineffective way versus an effective way to describe your experience and focus on transferable skills. So, server at Subway, bullet point created sandwiches for customers, versus using a bullet point such as worked in a fast-paced environment that required me to multitask and collaborate with my colleagues. Again, if you are the person looking at this resume, if you had those side by side, what would impress you more? What would make you think that is somebody that I want on my team? So again, this is something you want to think about. Okay, and then you want to find ways to emphasize your benefits and the evidence of why it would be a benefit to hire you and the evidence that supports that. So using personal descriptors and attributes, quoting formal evaluations and anecdotal evidence, proving to the employer the benefit of choosing you over someone else. Focus on the needs of the employer. So they don't really, I don't want to say this in a negative light, but they don't care about what you want to get out of the position. They need to hire you because they need to get something out of you. So don't focus on yourself, focus on the needs of the employers. And don't just list your activities, focus on your accomplishments. So it not only that it emphasizes that you did something, but you want to emphasize that you did it very well. Okay. So some examples here. Demonstrated strong work ethic by earning academic excellence as an undergraduate student while working full-time in a leadership role. Increased department efficiency by modifying patient admitting process. During my annual appraisal, my supervisor rated me exemplary in and introduced new products to boost sales 14%. Those are effective ways to emphasize why you are who they want to hire. Questions to consider as you are trying to come up with those bullet points. It's easier said than done, right? So these are what you'd want to consider and think about. What unique attributes do you offer an organization? What have you done better than others? What awards or honors have you received? What leadership positions have you held? How have you improved the organizations with which you have been involved? How can you demonstrate that you work well under increasing pressure? When have you taken initiative, exceeded the call of duty, or assumed more responsibility? What challenges have you overcome? If you are able to, be specific and use numbers. Supervise the care of 350 plus children and 125 plus employees. That sounds way better than supervise children and employees. Administered medication to 60 plus children 4 times a day. That's a lot of responsibility. Highlight that. Increased account base from 32 to 124. Identified 12,000 or misappropriated or uncollected monies. So again, just anything specific and number-based to show evidence that is good to do. Earlier, I did say that you aren't supposed to use numbers. There are some exceptions to that, so numbers 10 and above can be written numerically. Always write numbers numerically if ages, decimals, statistics, percentages, and sums of money are involved. Okay, so proofreading. My goodness, this is probably one of the most important things that you can make sure that you do. It is absolutely critical. Even if you think you have looked over it a million times and don't think there's anything left to change, it is absolutely imperative that you ask other people to look at your resume. Ask professors, advisors, friends, the Academic Success Center, the Writing Center, any of those places would be able to help you. Again, this is one of those ways that it can be part of that 8-second, 10-second test. If somebody sees a very obvious grammatical error, and that can be a reason to put your resume in the not interested list. So please do make sure to look at that. Other tips, avoid templates. It is pretty tempting to use those, but we really say stay away from that. One, other people may be using the same templates. It insinuates that you don't necessarily know how to make one for yourself. But most importantly, the formatting in those templates that you find on Microsoft Word or Office in general, they're really hard to modify. So it might work really well the first time, but then in a couple years when you need to go add in another position or another organization you're involved in or something like that, it's going to be really hard to modify and make it all look congruent. Be sure to use the same style of font. Avoid colored paper and colored fonts. Do not include photos, salary requirements. Don't embellish anything. Save it as a PDF. That way when you upload it, it doesn't change. A PDF makes it stay how it is saved. But if you upload it as a Word document, it can format in a funky way to the person that is going to be downloading it. And then if you are sending in a physical resume, do not staple or fold the paper. Okay, so that is it for resumes for right now. We're going to move on to cover letters. So this is a letter that is sent with your resume to introduce yourself and explain why you are sending in your resume and to provide some more information about yourself. The goal, again, is to get an interview. It should be brief and interesting. It should not be a carbon copy of your resume. It should highlight what you're going to bring to the job. And it should be versatile and suitable for several jobs. There's two types of cover letters. So the first one is going to be the one that is the most likely, which is your letter of application. It's targeted for a specific position. It outlines your skills to meet the company's needs and helpful to use the job description and lingo. Versus a letter of inquiry, which is less common, but this is basically a networking letter that you send to companies that you're interested in. You're asking for an informational interview, conducting company or industry research to see if this is something that would be for you in the future. This is what the formatting will look like for a cover letter. You do not need to put your name, but you do put your address, city, state, and zip. Then you do 2 spaces. Then you do the month, date, and year. 2 more spaces. The name, title, address, city, state, and zip of company. Another 2 spaces. The salutation, so dear so-and-so. Another 2 spaces. And then the first paragraph is the reason for writing and mentioning the position you are applying for. So examples could be your recent advertisement for this position calls for skills and experiences that I've demonstrated throughout my career. Please accept this letter and enclosed resume as application for the position of da-da-da-da-da. Or I am writing in regards to the blank position I came across recently and feel that I would be a qualified candidate. The second paragraph is to introduce yourself. So I am currently a senior at the University of Sioux Falls, majoring in psychology, and I anticipate graduating in May of 2016. I'm going to go back to this slide. And then the third paragraph is to call attention to your resume and reiterate interest. At the end, say something like, please do not hesitate to contact me with additional questions. I hope to hear from you soon. There's some additional information in there of other things that you can include in each of those paragraphs. After the last paragraph, you'll want to do 2 spaces, and then sincerely, and then your name. You do not need to do a signature if you are submitting electronically. Okay, so 10 tips for creating the right impression. So you want to make sure that the letter is geared for a specific job opening. Okay, so this is one of those things that you want your cover letter to be general enough that you don't need to do a complete overhaul of it every single time you apply for a job. But you also want it to be geared toward the specific job opening so that they know that it is not a just a general letter that you're sending to everybody. So you want to find ways to adapt the letter to the needs of the specific job that you want, and you want to specifically refer to that job in opening sentences. And then it is a very good idea to proofread to make sure that you are not sending the incorrect letter to a position. So I'm going to use an education one, for example. So you don't want to say, I was so excited to learn about the position at Harrisburg High School, and then send that to the Sioux Falls School District. So one way you can avoid that is just saving over your cover letter so that every time it's the most recent one, so that you'll know that you need to change that. Or whatever other way you can do to remind yourself that you need to make sure that you change that. And then you want to, for the second part, the second tip, you want to describe your related skills. So you want to tie your experience to your skills and show how they directly relate to the job description. Number 3, make it personal. Address the letter to a specific person. If you don't have a contact, call and ask. Usually you can find it online just by, doing some sleuthing on their website, but if you can't figure that out, it does not hurt you to call and ask. Number 4, create a catchy opener. Again, readers are kind of scanning, so they're scanning for content. Open with an attention-grabbing sentence. Describe why you're the best one for the job. Tip number 5, include vital information. Your name, address, phone with an area code, email address. All of that should be very clearly visible. The first thing the reader will need to contact you. Cannot reiterate number 6 enough. Make sure you proofread. Type. Make sure your cover letter is typed. You don't want to handwrite this at all. And then make sure it's proofread. This is your first impression. Make it good. It needs to be neat and professional. And the errors truly do reflect badly on you. Errors happen to anybody. They truly do. It does not mean that you're going to be a bad employee. But again, they use those as opportunities to limit how many applications that they're actually going to consider. A lot of times people are getting numerous applications, and they have to find ways to whittle down that large number or that large pool of applicants. And so errors are sometimes the reason or the ways that they do that. So it does not mean you're a bad person if you accidentally make a typo, but it definitely means that it could eliminate you from the job. So proofread, 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 and let somebody else proofread as well. An extra set of eyes is so important. You'll want to make sure you keep it brief. Use action words, active sentences. Limit letter to 1 page and only 3 or 4 paragraphs. The 1 page is a hard and fast rule for a cover letter. That is one that you will probably not get any other advice on. Stick to 1 page. Be confident, creative, and enthusiastic. This is a tool to sell your best asset, which is you. Let your personality shine in your letter. Then you want to keep copies. Keep a copy of every letter you send. Past letters can make a job search easier. Copies make follow-up easier, that kind of thing. So again, just find a way to organize it in a way that works best for you. Because you do going back to that first tip, is you want to make sure that you are doing an individual letter for each position, but you just don't want to accidentally make the mistake of sending the wrong letter to somebody. So find a way to organize that in a way that works for you. And finally, tip number 10 is request a response. Your goal here is to get an interview. It doesn't hurt to ask for one. So an example of a way that you could say that would be, I would appreciate the opportunity to meet and further share with you my qualifications. If my experience and abilities match your goals, I would welcome the opportunity for a personal interview. Okay. Okay, now things to avoid. You want to avoid what you hope to gain from the experience. At this point in the process, it is about what you can provide to them, not what they can provide for you. You can learn more about what they can provide to you during the interview process. Avoid listing just job responsibilities. Again, try to concentrate more on accomplishments and qualities and attributes that you have because of the responsibilities that you have had. Avoid submitting the same letter for every position. You need to make it personal to each position you apply for. This does take additional time, but it's very well worth it. You really can tell when you receive a general letter versus a personalized one. Again, can't say it enough, avoid grammatical errors, avoid negative comments about past employers. Even if your complaints or comments about past employers are completely legitimate, it really, the only thing it does by bringing those things up is demonstrates unprofessionalism on your part. This is not a time to identify weaknesses. This is a chance to sell your strengths. Again, in the interview process, they will ask for you to identify areas of improvement or weaknesses, but cover letters and resumes are not the time to do that. Avoid exceeding 1 page. If somebody sees a cover letter that is more than 1 page, it is likely to just get discarded. And try not to begin every single sentence with I. Use transitions such as furthermore, in addition, or in conclusion. In a paragraph where there's 6 to 7 sentences and they all start with I, it just is very repetitive and just sounds pretty unprofessional and does not highlight good written communication, so do avoid that as well. Okay, so now we are going to move on to the job search process and where to start. So the first thing you want to think about is you really want to consider the type of position you are interested in pursuing. Where can you see yourself working? What would you enjoy doing? So when you think about business administration or other business related jobs, I think a lot of times people think, just the very logical places like banks or financial institutions, those kinds of things. But again, every single business has business functions. So a hospital or nonprofits, those kinds of things. So just really think about the type of position and the type of environment that you want to be in. Make a list of employers that interest you. Find out if they're currently hiring. Research the application process for each of those employers. Make a list of, already did that one. Network and ask friends, family, professors, and advisors for suggestions. And prepare your cover letters and resume and get them up to date. Again, I showed you those resources on the ASC tab on my USF. Lots of information in there. You can also schedule an appointment with the Academic Success Center. There's 3 of us in here that would be more than happy to review your resume and cover letter and just to talk about the job search process in general. Where to look? You can start with organization websites, so the specific places that you would like to work, going on to their actual websites and seeing if there are any job openings there. the State Department of Labor. Purple Briefcase is our jobs database here through USF. If you don't already have an account, please make sure that you figure out how to get that set up. You can do that on our webpage or through my USF. But we post job postings, about 3,500 job postings every single year, and it can be anywhere from part-time jobs to internships to full-time career positions. So be sure to look at that on a regular basis. Commercial websites, professional associations, attend job fairs, local job fairs and events. We have employers on campus on a regular basis, located in Cooper's Cafe. We send that information out via email and also post it on the app. So pay attention for that for places that you may want to look into. And even if you are not necessarily in a position to start applying for jobs yet, it is still important to try to network through job fairs or those employers on campus, so that you can start making some connections in the area. Some of the top search engines: Indeed, Monster, Career Builder, Glassdoor, Simply Hired, Department of Labor for South Dakota, and Purple Briefcase, like I mentioned before. And then you just need to get out there. After finding multiple jobs that interest you, apply online or contact each business to inquire about their job application. Change your cover letter and resume for each position, and apply for more than one position. Fill out multiple applications. I know this is not necessarily what everybody wants to hear, but looking for that first professional job after college, and just looking for jobs in general, is a full-time job. You have to look on a very regular basis. I recommend daily. One day you could look and there could not be a position in an area that you would like to be at or an organization you'd like to be at, and the next day your dream job could get posted. You never know. You need to be checking those things regularly. And again, there's a lot of people applying for these positions. You want to make sure that you are applying several all the time so that you are having a better chance of landing those interviews. And then your next steps after you apply: follow up after 1 week, set up your voicemail in a professional manner, and also I would just like to add the social media aspect. Make sure your social media is up to par with professionalism, and if it is not, highly recommend just deactivating it altogether during the search process. And then comes the job interview. And then just back to the job interview on that ASC tab, ASC Services tab on my USF that I've mentioned. We have lots of mock interview questions that you could look at. We also conduct mock interviews here in the Academic Success Center. I do say that this is one of our most important services and most underutilized services. It's really important. Things can sound really good in your head, just like me doing this presentation right now. Some of the things sound really good in my head, and then it becomes jumbled when I say it out loud. It is important to practice saying the things that you want to convey about yourself so that you can adequately articulate them when the time is most important. You don't want the jumbled up to be happening in the job interview. So that is my plug for the ASC services. All right, so if anybody has any questions or discussion, you can always email them to asc@usiouxfalls.edu or career@usiouxfalls.edu. Either one works fine. It goes to the same people. It's just really whichever one you can remember the best. We are happy to schedule appointments with you or answer questions or discuss anything over the phone or email. Would love to hear from you. If you have any follow-up questions that you want to send to your professor for us to follow up with, we can do that too. So good luck to everybody as you gear up for your job search, whenever that may be. And finally, the last thing that I will say is that once you do obtain that job, do make sure to share that good news with our office. The placement rate that you hear so much about for job placement at USF, we advertise it a lot because it's something we're very proud of. This statistic is not made up. It is followed up. It is through following up with all of our graduates to find out where their first positions are. So instead of us bugging you, you can be proactive and let us know where you got a job. Thank you and have a great day.